over to the Cincinnati Reds. We'll send it to Elliot in a second, but I do have to ask, look, at this point, you were just in spring training last week. At this point last year, there was a lot of expectations for the Reds. A lot of people were feeling excited about this team coming off that run with all the rookies being called up, and Ellie McLean and Steer and everyone having that big breakout rookie year. So there was a lot of expectations and excitement for the Reds last year at this time. But when you covered spring training last year for David Vell leading the way for a team with high expectations, and this team with obviously Terry Francona with high expectations, how much different did your visit to camp feel this year versus last year? Two teams, both with expectations, if you will.
Well, the vibe's completely different, in my opinion, and Terry Francona is a factor on a lot of that for sure. I think there would regardless be a massive difference just in how the players are carrying themselves, regardless of who the manager was, because of how much last season, in the words of one of the guys, punched them in the mouth. Last year, the vibe at spring training was unbridled optimism. Man, we won all these. We were one game behind the Diamondbacks, they were saying, and they made it to the World Series, and we have more young talent than the Diamondbacks, and we're next. And that was the tone, and that was the vibe, and that was the message. And of course, no, that did not happen. And I'm reminded of like a Hunter Green quote, like, we're tired of talking. Like, we can say whatever we want, but we're a bunch of guys who haven't taken that step yet, and that's what we're thinking about. Spencer Steer, very similar message. Like, this year we just have to do it. The time for talking about expectation and vibe, it's like we're kind of past that as a group. And it's a bunch of players that have to get better. It's a manager who's playing a role in that as well. They've got to go do it. Who knows what this Red team's going to be? They're going to need to have a lot of guys click. They certainly have talent, but a lot needs to change. And again, no one has those answers. And let's play out the season and see how it goes.
Elly De La Cruz is having an unbelievable start to the spring. I think we have this debate, I think, once every spring. And it's right around the beginning. You start to feel the good vibes. Baseball's in the air. The birds are chirping. Feels warmer outside. How much stock are you putting in to a great performance by, let's say, Elly De La Cruz, or let's say a subpar performance by, like, Nick Lodolo yesterday, right? How much weight are you putting into spring training performances?
Yeah, a wise person once told me that in spring training, there are two things that matter, and it's your job to figure out which two things they are. Because there are a million things that are happening. So, like last year, for example, Alexis Diaz's struggles in spring were real, and those translated into the season, and he started slow. Will Benson had a monster spring last season, and that did not translate into the season. With Elly specifically, I'll kind of get off my main Elly take here. Last season, kind of the big feature I did on him was how it was an off season full of change, a new workout partner in Juan Soto, some pretty significant changes to his approach and his identity and the style of hitter he wanted to be. Completely different changes with, where he was as, his first full year in the big leagues. There were a million different things. What this offseason was about for Elly was about very small tweaks and was about intangibles. It was about kind of a very tiny change with this swing that gets the bat path more consistent. It's about cutting his strikeout rate down by a bit. The big number that Elly was chasing last year was 80 steals. The big number that Elly's chasing this year, he told me, be safe 90% of the time. And that is a sign of the maturity, the growth, the, you don't want to call it a winning mentality because that's kind of a cliche, but there's something to that with what's really is important to him with the lessons that he learned last year are, as Hunter Green told me, understanding his role in the organization and bringing everyone along with him. That'll be the most important thing that Elly does this season. He'll accomplish that with the way he plays, with the consistency he plays with. Elly uses the word consistency and discipline a lot. He used that when talking to me about his season, and now he's got to go do it as well.
You mentioned Will Benson. Will Benson last year, obviously a very disappointing season, but it's just one bad year. I think he showed enough promise in 2023 where I could, at least in the future, trust Will Benson. Do you think the Reds have that mindset right now? Do you think you could see Will Benson in the outfield, which at least right now seems to be set, but after Austin Hayes in the depth chart in the outfield, could Will Benson be that number 5?
Will Benson has more upside than anyone in the Reds outfield, and I wouldn't have him on my 26-man projected roster right now. Yeah. That shows the disparity that there is with a million guys in the Reds organization. Is Austin Hayes, was last year a fluky season, or was last year, obviously he won't have the kidney infection, but will he keep going down that trend? Jake Fraley, who is he right now? Is Spencer Steer take a big step forward, or just have some better luck in 2025? Does TJ Friedel stay healthy? Like, everyone has a thing. With Benson, that gulf is the widest, again, competing for a roster spot. He was very confident when I talked to him. He said that Last year was a stepping stone to his greatness. That last year reinforced some things specifically with his swing, but overall he didn't take it as a huge step back. But obviously the proof will be in, Terry Francona saying that, well, Benson, this is a very, very important spring for him. And again, I don't have Will on my projected 26-man roster right now, but he is certainly in position to go out and earn a spot. He has the talent to be this team's best outfielder, but he's just one of a million guys like Strand. I don't know what player Strand's going to be this season. Yeah. I don't know that anybody does. McLean, I'm as high on McLean as I could possibly be, but how much rust is there going to be? Nobody knows. That's what this season is. And, Will Benson certainly is one of those guys.
Another bubble guy, at least a guy that I'm still trying to figure out, Noelvi Marte. I think something happened last year. He regressed. He got to winter ball. He didn't play well. He's in spring training, and we're so very early into spring training, but we haven't seen a ton of great things from Noelvi Marte as of this moment. Is he a guy, at least on your 26, to start to start opening day?
He is not on my 26. And kind of, the irony for the Reds is that, well, last year the plan at this point was Noelvi Marte was going to be the Reds' everyday third baseman, one of the most consistent players down the stretch in 23. And we all know how bad Noelvi Marte was last season.
Yeah.
What's so fascinating was, of everyone in the Reds organization, Noelvi Marte is still the only person in the upper levels of the minor leagues or the major league roster, the only person with all of the tools to be a real, consistent, everyday third baseman. Jeimer Candelario is going to have to prove that he's athletic enough to play that position still. CES looks a lot slimmer. He hasn't played that position regularly. Gavin Lux has to prove he has the arm. Espinal has to prove he is the bat. Of course, Marte has more to prove than any of them. But if you're just looking at upside and ceiling, he's still the only guy with the tools and the upside and to be able to do it all at third base. And now, will he ever get there? I have absolutely no idea. Again, I'm not expecting to see that from him anytime in the near future in the big leagues. But that kind of keeps him still in the conversation, still in the picture, looking at the long-term plan for the Reds because of how many questions they do have at third base. And again, not too high on him entering this season, but he's another guy like Will Benson. Man, if he hits, that changes everything, and so they won't give him a lot of opportunity. He'll have to earn that opportunity, but they kind of would like to see that happen because that would go a long way.
Do you think the defensive positioning at the corners, first and third, do you think they have, or Terry Francona has an idea of how that's going to play out to start this season? As of right now, I think it could be any combination of, it's Gavin Lux, Jeimer Candelario, CES. Who in your mind, at least right now, has the position of first and third?
I don't think they're going to be everyday guys to start the season. I think you'll want to see them get multiple looks. I think you'll see pitcher-specific stuff if it's a ground ball pitcher on the mound. Maybe you have a slicker fielder and Gavin Lux at third base or something, or even Espinal, of course, at third base, something like that. I think that's what you'll see because, like I said, each of these guys has a whole lot that they need to show that they can be an everyday third baseman. But I'll say this as well, they're paying Jeimer $15 million a year because they saw something in him. And also, too, if Jeimer stayed healthy, he would have been on pace to hit 29 homers last season. And for a Reds team that didn't have enough power, that's still a lot of homers. Gavin Lux was the 13th best hitter in baseball in the second half of last year. So, one, he'll be in there. Two, they'd sure like to get that bat at third base, where it's kind of an open spot right now. Espinal, with what he can do defensively, gives him value in that spot there. CES. Man, if he can play third, he might be able to hit 40 homers at third base. So all these guys also have something attached to them where it's not like where they were in 2023 where, no offense, but Nick Senzel was entering the season starting as their third baseman, and they knew they were kind of holding on until Ellie debuted. So it's a different spot now because they do have more, but none of these guys is a sure thing or anywhere close.